Hello and welcome to EURACTIV's Agrifood Podcast. I'm Paula Andres.
I'm Natasha Foote.
And I'm Gerardo Fortuna.
And here is your weekly update on all things agriculture and food in the EU from EURACTIV's Agrifood team.
This week, a chat with the New Zealand Agriculture Minister and water wars in France.
And welcome back to another episode of the EURACTIV's Agrifood Podcast after the special.
The special spooky Halloween edition.
Yeah, we're actually 3 in this room. We are 4 in the room today.
It's true.
Because we are here with our new colleague, new Agrifood reporter at EURACTIV, Paula.
Paula, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Paula. And I'm happy to have joined the team this week.
We're very happy to have you.
This week, guys, this is the swimming pool approach, no?
In the deep end, you mean?
No, it's just like you basically start, if you want to swim, you just put someone...
Sink or swim?
Yeah.
Yes.
But, yeah, okay.
And it really was sink or swim because Paula's been stuck straight in with a very interesting interview, which we're going to bring you today with
Damien O'Connor, who's the Agriculture Minister of New Zealand, guys.
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand. Very interesting.
He's also the co-chair of the OECD Agriculture Ministerial meeting, which also brings us nicely into how we ended up interviewing him this week.
Shall I say it?
Yes.
Yeah, there was this meeting of the OECD, the Agriculture Ministerial meeting. They were in Paris last week for 2 days, actually. They also drafted a final declaration on agriculture, which is actually falling just before this week there's going to be the COP27 start, which for the first time going to deal with agriculture too.
Yeah, I remember last time writing a brief, a cop out.
Yeah.
And clearly someone read it and did something about it because agriculture, and that has to be why, yes.
Yeah.
Because actually agriculture there's a big accent on agriculture this year.
And together with Paula, we had this interview with Damien O'Connor, the Minister, New Zealand Minister for Agriculture, and we spoke also about this. But let's dive into this and let's listen from him directly.
We would like to ask you what points would you highlight from the final declaration released today?
I think at a time of international disruption and pressure, it's wonderful to have a declaration supported by all participants at the OECD forum. And I think it's an indication perhaps of our determination to show unity in the face of conflict here in Europe and the challenges of climate change and food security. So it was a really great outcome at a critical time.
If you can also further elaborate a bit on the aspect of food security, because you mentioned there's also the current situation in Ukraine. So what's your take on the current risk for global food insecurity?
I mean, clearly we're facing a lot of pressure, and climate change is also impacting adversely on many food producers, farmers in different countries. In some cases, occasionally raising the yields because of better climatic conditions, but more often than not, destroying crops and the livelihoods of many farmers. So that's an ongoing challenge that we are trying to address through emissions reductions and our initiatives in that area. In the short term, making sure that there are no unnecessary trade barriers to the movement of food to address the shortages created by the conflict in Ukraine. And so all of these things were referred to in discussions at the forum. And obviously the declaration, states a determination to get on and help one another through collaboration and cooperation to address both of those two major international challenges.
Yeah, moving on to COP. So this will be the first COP actually addressing food systems and agriculture. We would like to know what are your expectations on the outcome of this event?
I mean, clearly from this forum, the OECD one, there was a determination to remind participants at COP that food security is first and foremost a humanitarian issue that must be addressed, and to ensure that people are fed is important when it comes to enabling them to address the issues of emissions reduction and giving them the tools to do that. So while it's not a direct trade-off one against the other, we have to ensure people are fed every single day, and then through technology and the sharing of information, we can reduce the emissions profile of that food production, which will play into the targets of COP and our international NDCs.
And I will also briefly make a reference to the recent deal between the EU and New Zealand when it comes to the fruit trade agreement that they struck recently in July. There's an interesting innovation in this deal, which is a sustainable food system chapter. And I'd like to know if this could be a role model. Also, there's also some very innovative features when it comes to animal welfare condition. So what could be, if this could be considered a best practice even at the global level?
Look, I think the greatest value of the trade agreement between the EU and New Zealand was the standards that we have set across many areas of government procurement, environmental goods and services transfer, animal welfare, reference to animal welfare standards, labour standards. All of these things mean that we see the value of setting an example for the rest of the world when it comes to trade. And in terms of food and goods, there were some, they were the challenging areas for us, particularly around dairy and beef, but we committed to the highest standards of food production that we hope will flow on to other trade agreements in other countries' practice.
As you might know, the EU has been criticized for the huge amount of farming subsidies that end up in the pockets of big farmers and are also potentially harmful to the environment. So what is your opinion on that?
I mean, in New Zealand, we have no subsidies, and we appreciate that other countries have different forms of food production and agriculture. So while we will always advocate for reform of agricultural subsidies that contribute to inefficient production, the wasteful emissions, and distorted market prices and signals, we understand that countries are taking their own approach to this, but are increasingly aware that harmful agricultural subsidies are detrimental to the global environment. And the WTO is leading the charge to try and get reform in this area. It is slow, but New Zealand actually has been pushing for this for a couple of decades.
And a very last question on the role of innovation and technology. It was also present in the final declaration. So I just want to know from you some good practices when it comes to the innovation in terms of coping with either the food security risk but also climate change.
One of the things that was acknowledged was the importance of people, attracting them to and retaining them in our food production systems, and giving them the skills to use the technology as we go forward is just as important. So then the infrastructure required, such as broadband, access to capital to purchase the technology, all of these things are part of the challenges that we collectively acknowledged and committed to help one another with in a collaborative way. World Bank being there, ensuring that consideration of capital flows and capital availability is just as important as supporting young people and rewarding them into the food production systems and agriculture.
Thanks so much for your time and for this interview.
So today we have with us a very special guest. We have Hugo with us. Hugo, maybe you could just introduce yourself quickly.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to join you. I'm from
Nice to have you.
Agrifood Hub and working from Paris.
Exactly. Hugo is our agri reporter in France. And the reason we have you on the podcast this week is because there's been some interesting goings on in France this weekend, it's been a long story.
Yes.
So Hugo, maybe what's going on over in France?
Yes, this is a very sensitive story. Last Saturday, October 29th, 1,500 activists marched in a field in Deux-Sèvres, a region in western France, not far from La Rochelle, it's a big city. There were farmers' unions, environmental activists, left-wing politics, there to prevent the installation of 16 basins, huge water reserves like artificial swimming pools, for irrigation. According to the farmers, these reserves are useful for accessing water in time of drought.
Okay, and these water reserves, can you explain a little bit more about them? Why are they so controversial?
Yes, because these pools are not simply water reservoirs like dams. These pools pump water from the groundwater. So farmers involved in the project say that water will be drawn in winter when groundwater overflows in order to make reserves for the summer. But according to the activists, this system will reduce the level of groundwater. There are other problems. These pools are open air reserves, so the water will evaporate. There is also privatization of water by farmers. But above all, these reserves encourage a productive agriculture, very greedy in water, like the culture of maize. And for the activists, the public money, because around 70% paid with public funds, must be used to accelerate the agroecological transition. On the other side, for the farmers, it's very necessary to give access to water to help food production, especially in this current context. And back to the manifestation. There were many people who have been hurt, police officers and activists. The government and FNSEA, the main trade union, the main agri-union, support the project, and the police. The minister even called the activists eco-terrorists. So the atmosphere is very tense.
Yeah, very tense. I mean, we're also coming off of a year, that's had severe droughts. So you can really see how the tension would rise both on the farming side and also, environmentally speaking. And so as I understand it, the activists are blaming France for not respecting European law. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. That's what they say in a petition to the Petty Commission in the European Parliament. This summer, the Parliament and even the European Commission recognized that France has not complying with 9 European water directives. For several reasons, the installations are made in a protected area. There were not enough impact studies, etc. So the activists are now calling a parliamentary investigation is the next step. But on a national scale, however, the project is allowed by law.
And I suppose this, this fight over access to water and storage of water, it's going to be a problem that's going to get worse and worse, with droughts, with climate change. And it's not just confined to France. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about this kind of, is there similar situations elsewhere? How's it going kind of outside of France?
Italy, Portugal, but also Spain are very advanced in irrigation. The defenders of these reserves point out that France irrigates only 10% of the surface area, and it's 26% in Italy and 50% in Spain. However, some studies have shown that Spain suffer more intense drought since country starts drawing water from groundwater. And today, some groundwater are dry in Spain. It's a big problem. Yesterday, I had a conversation with an irrigation specialist who is very pro irrigation. And he told me that Spain had perhaps gone too far. But for him, France is far from Spain, he said. We have to find a balance. Today, the construction is off because of the manifestation. For the moment, because there is three basins have been built, but 16 more are planned for 2026. So the story has only just begun.
Just the beginning. Okay,
Yes.
so Hugo will be following this. There's a couple of stories. If you want to learn more about this, you can check out Hugo's stories on EURACTIV France. They'll also be translated on EURACTIV.com into English. So do check those out. Thank you very much, Hugo, for your time.
Thank you too.
So that's all from us this week. And this week, the EURACTIV Agrifood Podcast was brought to you by EURACTIV's Agrifood team. That's Gerardo Fortuna, Paula Andres, and Natasha Foote, with the technical support of Ebi Chiori.
This podcast is also available on all major streaming platforms, including Apple, Amazon, Stitcher, and Spotify.
And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss the latest agriculture news from the EU. I'm Gerardo Fortuna. Thanks for listening and see you next week.